we've been cruising along at this just unbelievable time for sellers. They've been living in a house that's been falling apart around them, and they have been able to just sell it at the top of the market. But now all of a sudden, the sales have nosedived.
There's pros and cons to every market. People always put this COVID market on the pedestal, but they don't remember that you had to be in a house within an hour, and you needed to waive your appraisal, waive your inspection. You had to offer 50, 60,000 above price. It was insane. I don't know what's going to happen with the tariff situation. If they enforce them and they continue to be on board, I'm seeing a situation where mortgage rates drop. More buyers are going to be influenced to buy because rates are dropping. And any kind of improvement where we're seeing price-wise, I think, unfortunately, you're going to see sellers start to get their way again.
I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. If new home construction is crushed by tariffs, the builders are going to stop building, and that will probably push higher pricing. But at the same time of that, if we're going to see a short-term pain or even a long-term pain in the form of recession, that just may implode the whole system and prevent anybody from getting any more money on their houses where they have to sell them for a lot less. So it could go either way. Javier Pidana, we appreciate you joining our show, man. Welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're a real estate agent in the Phoenix, Arizona market. And from looking at your prior sales, I checked you out a little bit. Over the last 5 years, it seems like that you help a majority of home buyers, which is great because they need help right now. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, your market and your strategies and what you're seeing out there. But, before we get started, just kind of tell everybody a little bit about you. I know you have a YouTube channel, some great information that you're putting out there, trying to help people a lot. So just kind of fill everybody in on who you are, what you do, and your construction background. I've learned a little bit about you, but go ahead.
No construction background, but
your dad, didn't your father?
Oh, you did your research.
Yeah, I did some research, man. Come on, Javier, come on.
So growing up, my dad was in construction, and he would wake me up on weekends to work when I didn't want to. It made me hate construction.
All right.
But I guess that counts as background. I'm just an agent who I've been doing this about 12 years now, and I've one of my main things that bring me joy in life is to perform. I was a former classical guitarist. I was in drama growing up, and I somehow landed in real estate, and YouTube was just one of those avenues where that inner part of my personality would come out. And people always, realtors always reach out to me and, oh, hey man, can you give me real estate advice or YouTube advice? Or it's just like, performing for me is always a part of the equation of Javier. So it's just a way that came out. So I enjoy making videos that primarily educate people. My approach isn't to convince people because there's people in different stages, right? So my videos aren't intended to try to convince people to buy or to tell people, hey, this is why you should buy or this is why you shouldn't buy. I'm helping those folks that are like, hey, I'm buying a house because of personal reasons and I need some guidance. So I'm helping those that have made that choice already and are in need guidance so they don't get taken advantage of. I'm not in the space of like trying to convince people otherwise. So other than that, I've been fortunate enough to make a living off of it. I have 3 kids, a wife, a beautiful home here in Litchfield Park, Arizona, and just been able to, get by helping people.
That's awesome. 12 years ago, you're kind of a young guy. How old were you when you entered real estate?
19, 20, I want to say 19 or 20 years old.
So you helped your dad do construction. I have a extensive construction background.
There you go.
Started swinging a hammer back in 1989, way before you were born. Yeah, I can say that. So tell me why, did your dad, was he into flipping? Was he in the construction to build a rental portfolio, or was he just a contractor, or all of the above?
Good question. Nothing to do with any of the housing. It's odd that ended up happening that way, but it was more in the new construction. So the finished carpentry, the baseboard, the door, the shelving hardware. The what like shelves are made of, right? So just managing crews, and even to this day, he still has a big company. He runs a door shop in Phoenix.
Wow.
You seem like a construction guy. You have that vibe to you.
I can't.
You
You can't take
I
it
would
out. You know, it's
I wouldn't wanna call from you at 6 AM because you'd probably call me for
that's
a bad reason.
that's right. You know, I started work early in the morning. Yeah, running crews, and but so he was a trim carpenter. That's awesome, man, and a lot going on in the real estate market. And dating back 12 years ago, you got into the market after the 2008 crisis. Um, you, like a lot of the licensees now across the country, haven't really seen, what it was like when we really had a downturn in the housing market. And sort of since like 2013, the market has really just been on fire. And I want to dive in because Arizona has been in the news. I mean, the center of a lot of articles, and in particularly the Phoenix and surrounding areas, and what seems to be like a mix of conflicting data. And I feel like that's what people have been receiving. I mean, over the last couple of years, rah rah, cheerleading, things are going crazy, and they were. And then all of a sudden, now it's like the narratives are starting to change. All of a sudden, they figured out that housing's unaffordable for a lot of home buyers. It's like, wow, well, yeah, glad that they're coming to that conclusion. But I've heard from some sources that homes in Arizona, in your market, are selling fast still over list price. And then others have reported massive cooling off and, mounting inventory. And some are predicting major price corrections headed your way. And maybe you're starting to see that now. But before we dive in, Javier, I just want to pull up so you can kind of tell the audience and educate me a little bit as well. This uh, map on this Arizona government website. And if we can I'll expand it a little bit here so that everybody can see it nice and bright. Can you just kind of navigate us through this state looking at the map and tell us, so you're in the Phoenix area, but what areas do you kind of cover? And, when we're looking at the map and we're talking about the housing market, should we be focused on certain things, or, is like some of these just desert area kind of thing? I mean, just can you take us around the state?
Yeah, I mean, so this is what I always tell people that are watching housing market data on, and probably not your viewers. Your viewers are probably on the smarter side, but a lot of people will watch a market data update, right? And even if it's someone talking about Phoenix, and I'm talking about a specific city, and I'm saying this is what's happening in that market, that doesn't really apply to yours, right? So, I mean, this is a good map of Arizona. If you were to pull up a population percentage density map, you would see that Phoenix area and we're surrounding that area, we're maybe a little bit into Pinal, is like bright red, and everything else is kind of like a lighter red, right? So I'm primarily in the brightest red, where it's the highest percent of density population of Arizona. And from there, there's like little pockets. And I'm looking at a map now. Maybe down there near Pinal County, near Tucson, that kind of there's another pocket there. But I'm in the most dense population part of Arizona. So everywhere else, I mean, Flagstaff, I think it's one of the coolest temperatures it gets, at least in the Southwest area. It's a beautiful part of Arizona. As we have Sedona near Flagstaff, where it's like those beautiful red rocks. So, but I'm primarily in the heat of where everybody is in Phoenix. Tucson, I don't really dabble in. That's probably 3 hours south of me. To drive by there all the time, but unfortunately, can't. I'm licensed to sell there, I think, but I just don't really go down there often. So my expertise and what I primarily do is primarily the Phoenix metro area, which then at that point, breaks down to even further cities. Like someone who's from out of town, I won't say, "Oh, I'm from Litchfield Park." They won't know that. I'll say, "Oh, I'm from Phoenix," and they'll, just like Los Angeles, or I'm sure in your area, there's one major city that you identify, and there's smaller cities around there that people in the area know of, but everywhere in the country, you just say that big city.
Yeah, we have the same thing. Maryland is a very small state with a very big population. So we have about 6.5 million people in Maryland, and about half of them work. Others don't work for whatever reason. Maybe they're too young to work, or they're retired, or they don't work. But we've got about 3 million people, give or take, that are, driving, the workforce here. We've been in the news, the Doge cutbacks, sort of like in Maryland. there's like 9 major markets that are the biggest counties and cities that are surrounding Baltimore and DC, and a lot of those are interconnected because people in Baltimore still work in DC. And then you kind of get into Northern Virginia, and we're only in Maryland, but I know exactly what you're saying. If you go down on the eastern shore, I mean, the population is just, it's so spread out, and it's a lot of farmlands and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
very
And
spread. Yeah.
yeah, you can drive for miles and not see one house, just
Mhm.
farmland. Um, Working with primarily, and by the way, all of Javier's links are in the show notes. Cruise on over, give him a shout out, subscribe to his channel. He does a lot of great things. Watched several of his videos, and he's speaking a lot of truth. He's not just, like he said, cheerleading to try and bury people in payments, but trying to educate people, which is what we do as well. But can you give us, working with primarily home buyers, and I'm right with that, right? I mean, when I'm looking at your stats over the last 5 years, it looks like it's heavily weighted to buyers versus listings. Is that accurate to
It's
say?
accurate, yes.
Okay. So can you tell us now, 2025, what are you seeing in your housing market, and give us a little bit of, you know, indication on sort of like the common theme or the common vibes with the home buyers?
Good question. Well, I think if we would have had this conversation a week ago, it would have been a much different, like you said, vibe. It would have been definitely for me at least some like better news. This year started off with a lot of stubborn sellers. We had situations where because I help primarily buyers, I carry at least about 5 to 10 buyer broker agreements at a given time where I'm helping people. At least if I'm doing well and I'm checked in my business. So I'm showing houses all over the Phoenix area, Northeast, West, South Valley. And a lot of these sellers are just being super stubborn. They're 90 plus days on the market. They weren't budging on price. They weren't budging on concessions. We would make an offer. It just wouldn't work out. If we got under contract, even if I had a house once where there was over 100 days on the market, we got it a little bit under list price, but the roof is completely shot. And they were just like, no, we're not doing it. We're already giving you a $5,000 discount. So it's like these sellers were just not based in reality. They were still very aspirational price, right? They still thought their value should have been higher. They still think that they had the cards and buyers had to full to their needs. So March was really where that started to shift, and we were able to get price reductions. We were able to get closing costs. We were able to get um, inspections were a lot more favorable towards buyers. So, because of that, on top of that, our new construction inventory was just on fire. If I had a buyer and their main concern was affordability, which a majority of the buyers, we would go look at new construction and get a rate incentive of the lowest I saw was 3.49% interest. On top of that, a 2-1 buy down. So they started off at 1.5, 2.5. On top of that, closing costs. So if majority everybody was going towards new construction. So these resale sellers were finally getting the message. They were reducing their prices. They were being a lot more, flexible on prices. We had a high inventory. I think we're at 24,000, I believe last week when I checked. And overall, it was starting to really feel like a buyer's market. Even though the data showed us in January that we were in the buyer's market, it didn't feel like one. March started feeling like it. Well, as we know, the news happened this last week, and interest rates, I believe, I haven't checked in the last hour, but are still trending downward. And when rates go down or prices go down, more buyers come into the market. As long as they feel it's not even, as you probably know this, having a YouTube channel as well, it's not even the actual news of what's happening. It's news articles, it's the marketing that agents are doing that are like, hey, it's getting cheaper to buy now because rates are dropping. That makes people flood into the market. It's either black or white. They're either not in the market or they're flooding in the market. So my concern now is, well, I haven't seen this yet, but we're finally feeling that pressure being relieved on the prices for resale so they can compete with new construction. We're going to have now, because rates, even the rates dropped to 5.5 for FHA or even 5, more people going into the market now, start eating up that inventory. New constructions, historically, what they've done when it gets better to buy a resale, either rates or prices go down, they get rid of those incentives. So now it's just going to get a little bit more difficult for buyers. So I don't know where we're going from here on out. As you just obviously we're playing it day by day, but if we would have spoken last week, I would have been speaking very favorably. It's like, yeah, things are looking up. I feel the prices are getting better. We're getting discounts on prices again. We're getting more concessions, and overall, sellers are feeling that pressure, and it was really a lot of good news. From here on, I don't know what's going to happen.
Hey guys, I just want to take a quick break and let you know about my Smart Homebuyer Seminar that is coming up. I actually have one on April 12th. It sold out very, very quickly, but I set another date. It's Monday, April 14th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's Monday, April 14th. It's live and on Zoom. And for many of you that have been following my channel, you know that I come to you every single week with multiple videos giving free information. And this Smart Home Buyer Seminar is really a condensed version. I'm going to provide you with great information if you're planning on buying a home now or sometime in the near future, no matter what state you're in. I'm going to give you some great advice on how to do it, what to do, and how to be the most prepared, and even one step further, because a lot of my viewers are saying, well, do I have to have an agent, a buyer's agent? The answer is no, you don't. You can do it on your own. Not that I'm advocating for that, but many of you are making the decision to try to do that. And so I'm going to be giving you that information, a lot of great information that should you choose to go that route, you'll be more prepared, more equipped in the process. And I think you're going to love it. It's going to be great for you if you're in the market to buy right now or in the near future, or if you know someone who is, you can gift this course for them as well. You're going to come away with a lot of printouts, a lot of great data, information, check sheets. It's going to be great. So hope to see you. It's going to sell out fast. It's limited to 30 tickets. And of the 3 hours, it's a 2-hour course with an hour of live Q&A with me. That's why we're capping it to 30 people. So check it out, and I hope to see you then. There is, and staying with that spirit, I want to pull up this this article, and it's from ArizonaBigMedia.com.
According to Phoenix Realtors, every housing market's hot. They're just everything's amazing.
Well, this is interesting, Javier. This is kind of cool because, you don't really know how to read this article when you look at the headline. It says the hottest housing markets according to Phoenix Realtors, but then all of a sudden it craps all over the headline because it says for the third year in a row, closed single-family home sales declined slightly from the previous year. At the end of 2024, the drop of 0.4% was for 67,654 closed sellers in Greater Phoenix. But now check this bombshell, a volume far short of the 105,322 annual sales just 4 years ago. So I think what's happening is, we've been cruising along at this, this just unbelievable time for sellers to get top market for the last several years, not fix anything. They've been living in a house that's been falling apart around them, and they have been able to just sell it at the top of the market. But now all of a sudden, the sales have nosedived. And here's what I want to just, getting back to your point of just a week ago, and I'm cautioning you, just like I've been in this market for a long time, decades. And, prior to, keep in mind, I started out doing construction home improvements in the late 80s. I was building houses in the 90s and, 2000s. And all the way up, even through the financial crisis, rehabbing houses. And back in 2007, interest rates started declining, mortgage interest rates. And then we had the big crash of 2008. So the problem with the houses now, as you know, is that they're really priced still at 2 and 3 handles. When you go back, 4 years ago and you're looking at 2.74%, 2.65%, 30-year fixed rate mortgages and these home prices. So they're really priced certainly in the 2s and 3s and low 4s and what we've seen in 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. Now we would have to get back to below 4% in order for these prices to still kind of match the affordability of just a couple years ago, 2022. Yep. So I wouldn't be so I mean, it's something to watch, but buyers may be coming out, but are you seeing where their affordability has changed? Are you seeing where they're making a lot more money at work that now they can even, afford these high prices?
No. So no, they're not making more money. And like I said, we're not quite seeing this happened back in September of last year. Looks like you keep an eye on things, so you probably know rates went down, I believe, to like it was mid fives, I believe, FHA, and like low sixes conventional just in September, and then like for like 2-3 week period, and then went back up again. That and I, it was funny because I'm not too sure what caused that, but I remember at the time Powell made an announcement about how they're reducing the Fed rates like multiple times in the next year or so. And that alone, I had people call me, "Hey, I heard in the news that the Fed's reducing the rate." And the first few calls, that's not the mortgage rates. They're not talking about mortgage rates. They're talking about the prime rate. It has nothing to do with it. Blah, blah, blah. But then after the third or fourth or fifth call, I was like, yeah, I guess rates are going down. I mean, yeah. So what does that mean for you? Oh yeah, I think we want to get start looking at it or whatever. So it's this. Once again, I don't think people are really led by the actual numbers. I think people are led by what's being the perception created by either the news or whatever they're seeing on the news. Once again, buyers agents. If anything, this whole buyer broker lawsuit that happened that since September last year in Arizona, we're forced to now use buyer broker agreements. I think if anything, we've seen that buyer agents have a lot of power when it comes to real estate. The first few months, I don't know if you covered this a lot, but a lot of listing agents or sellers weren't really paying. Oh yeah, we can choose our own compensation now. Well, we're not going to offer anything, and then their houses wouldn't sell, and the houses wouldn't be shown anymore. And then they had to like finally learn, okay, fine, we'll pay this compensation, and then their house sold, right? So I think a lot of the demand is also created by agents marketing and what they're putting out there and what they're saying. And we're not seeing anything as of yet. It's only happened like with less than a week ago, right? But when this happens, like it happened back in September, where rates drop, agents start marketing more, news articles start coming out about how interest rates are dropping, and that gets people excited again. And that creates, is it true? Not really. They're only going to drop a few $100s on their monthly payment. It's not that like amazing, so you can go rushing out. But it's that perception that really affects the mindset of a buyer that then creates that momentum for them to go out and look again. So it's unfortunate. It's I wish we were more in tune with the data, but the society is probably going to be led more by the marketing of what's going on rather than what's actually happening. At least that's what I you know
At,
much than I do.
at least in the call side of things, or maybe the showing activity will pick up, but I don't think that it's earth shattering on the affordability side of things. I mean,
No,
I
not at all.
think if anything, and this is what a lot of people have to be cautioned to, is that we're really looking at unemployment rising. And, what may seem to be good for the many, there are a lot of people in there that it would be even riskier at this moment or this time to maybe make a buying decision as a first time buyer, somebody that's never owned a home before, doesn't really understand the cost and things like that. I mean, do you agree with that or disagree?
Is it as opposed to? Is it a good idea for them to buy with the idea of them like having it as an investment, or what do you mean?
Well, no, just the fact that, to jump into just a news article that says interest rates are dropping to buy a
Yeah,
house to save a couple $100. The reason why it's happening is because the economy isn't that good. So
yeah.
they're trying to stimulate the economy.
That should not be the primary reason why you start looking for a house. Absolutely not. You should not be influenced by anybody or anything to start the process. If you have a personal goal to do this and you have your own benchmarks that you've created, and then at that point, once you're ready, it still feels like it's unreliable market based on your data collection, then don't do it. But I think for everyone who's being influenced by what's being the marketing that's going to be coming out and the articles coming out about how it's now more affordable to buy, I don't think they should be influenced by that at all. I think they need to now more than ever collect data, but at least look at what's going on there, but don't be influenced by it. Have personal benchmarks. Do you have a good idea of your budget? Do you have your emergency fund set up? Are you in control of your credit cards, or are they in controlling you? Right. So you have to really make sure now, if you are going to dip your feet into home ownership, you want to make sure you have a really ironclad budget. You have a real ironclad financial belief system, right? The way your relationship with money has to be really solid, because people think that once they own a home that they're suddenly going to become a better version of themselves, but that's just not what happens. If anything, it exposes those weaknesses further.
I like that. Yeah, that's very true. I want to address on a couple things, kind of go back and talk about some things that you mentioned. One, the state of Arizona was affected by this new buyer agency concept. In Maryland, since the 1980s, we've had it. So it
Mhm.
really wasn't much of a change for us here. Now, certainly the public awareness of they were told for years, and in fact, a lot of sellers are still told by their agents. I mean, I can just read my comments and my videos and see where a lot of these agents are, where their heads are. But a lot of them are telling their sellers, if you don't offer a commission, you're going to get less views on the house. And though that may semantically be correct, because if the buyer doesn't have any money to pay their agent and they sign this new agency agreement, new for states like Arizona, they maybe can't go around that agent. They can't actually see that house or buy that house because the agent could stop them from, because, like, wait a minute, if you can't afford to pay me and they're not offering any money, then I'm going to stand in the way
Yeah.
of you looking at that house, right?
Yeah, 100%. Reminds me of a story when it first happened here in Arizona. It was August 1st, and I had a seller that was going live at the time. And I remember she said, "Okay, well, we're going to maybe offer 1%, and that's it." And I said, "Great. I'm new to this. This is new. So let's just do that." So people would go, it was an active house right away. I had one person that was really, really interested. And now, as you know, the law states that they cannot let whatever's being offered in compensation affect the buyer, like their perception or their ability to make an offer, right? So, in my eyes, well, these agents wouldn't break the rule. They would, even if we're not offering the full amount, they are still going to show them the house. They are still going to make an offer, and any difference of compensation, they're either going to take the hit or they're going to get that from their buyer, because they wouldn't let that get in the way, is what the rule states. So that's what I thought. So then this person, oh yeah, great offer. They came back asking for 3%, and we went back, very light counter, like almost agreeing to their terms. Any buyer would have just accepted it, but we were very firm. We're only paying 1%. Never heard from them again. It was just like me at 9 a.m. Where is he? Where did he go? For those that don't know, we had him. But anyways, I called them. Hey, what's going on? Are you guys still interested? What's happening? They're not interested no more. Why? What's going on? Like, you told me they really loved the house and this was the one. I don't know. They moved on. So they didn't directly tell me that it was a compensation issue and the fact that they weren't getting the 2%. Maybe they presented to them, hey, they're not paying my 3% or whatever, 2.5. So, let's just move on. So they were getting in the way, I believe, without getting in the way, without I don't have evidence of it, but I don't see any other reason why. So my seller kind of forcibly learned, after it happened 2 or 3 times, okay, fine, we'll be a little bit flexible on that, but we might have to, adjust the price around or adjust the concessions around so we can make it work. So yeah, there's no one going to directly tell you, hey, you're going to pay this compensation or else you're not going to get any offers or showings. But you start learning really quickly that these buyer's agents, because you don't have direct access to the buyer, they get to change the narrative that the buyer hears. So they actually have more power than we thought. So it was a very like you said, it's like you sign this agreement saying in the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever, if you buy any kind of property or exchange any kind of interest on a property, that agent is owed X%, regardless if they're involved or not. And most of the time, I have to say, I've done a few transactions since then. I've always had the seller cover that. I've never had a situation where the buyer had to cover it. But still, it is true in theory. You could get a chance where if they're not paying anything, you have to cover the difference, and that agent then basically becomes a block in the way of that house. And guess what? There's a lot of agents that take things personal, and when they say, "Hey, I want to buy a house, but I don't want to use you anymore. Can you let me go of your contract?" A lot of them go, "Nope, we're not letting you go," and they get locked in for a year, and those people are just island. Unfortunately, they can't buy or they can't do anything.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing in Javier that we can do, especially being voices in the YouTube space and having big audiences and big viewership on our videos, is to say commissions are negotiable. I think if anything it should be broadcast from the rooftops is, hey, commissions are not fixed, commissions are not set. They're individual, and negotiate, 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 negotiate. And but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of bad actors, unfortunately, in every business. And we're dealing with such big ticketed items and such a emotional experience, and it really is. Sometimes it's tragic to experience what you just said, where agents won't let somebody out of a contract. That's why we always say interview, interview, interview. Don't just take the agent because it was your best friend in college. Make sure you're taking the agent because you think they can do a professional job for you. They'll represent you best and put your needs ahead of their own, which is, in a you don't get paid until something sells environment for the most part. That's becoming more and more difficult to find. Give me an idea of like your buyer, your the composition. Not as far as like who they are specifically, but like where do they work? Like when someone's moving to the Phoenix area, what is the industry that you're seeing that most of the buyers are coming for? And are they remote? Are they in office? Can you just kind of break some of that down for us?
I'm not getting too many people now that are moving here. I used to get a lot of those. Now it's people that have already been here for like 6 months to a year. They're already like, oh, we moved here a year ago, 6 months ago. We've been renting and we're ready to buy now. So I haven't had any direct people like on the way here. It happens once in a while, but not as nearly as much as it was before. I mean, it varies. I've had people work in the tech industry. I've had people um, part involved in tech, not necessarily in tech, but like part of the microchip, processing centers and whatnot. People in construction. I had someone who was like not a welder, but they create like the metal sheets that are used for building, and it's just such a variety. It's kind of hard to narrow it down to a few. A blue collar, white collar, all kinds. But the common trend I see with most people, it's when they are reaching out to me, it's because they've already done their homework. They've already saved. They already have their budget. It's never, back before the YouTube days when I was doing open houses or, doing whatever I can to find anybody who was looking to buy. It was very much sometimes I would encounter someone that didn't have any savings, or they had savings, but the only savings they had, it was going to go to buy the house. Now that was a different time where houses were a lot cheaper and down payment assistance was available and it was very cheap. So then that was still a valid option there. But it's, very thankfully because of this channel, most of the people that are working for me already are research well prepared and they're ready to go. So I don't really encounter the common trend with most of them. Is my point was that they're really financially savvy people. They have their savings line, their credit's solid, and they're just ready to kind of be led to the next point now. Um, so I can't really speak to how it looks like when I'm out there and qualifying people from point A to point Z. I'm already kind of picking them up at point D or E, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that's good. That means that what you're doing is working. It's educating people and giving them some financial literacy that maybe they didn't have prior to watching your shows. You talked about people migrating there. I'm sure a lot of domestic migration, right? Maybe during the pandemic, 2020, 2021. What were they migrating there for? I mean, and where were they coming from?
I had a one or two from, I think it was Chicago, but mostly everybody was from the California area.
Gotcha.
And once again, variety of different jobs. I've had people that some of them weren't getting transferred. Some of them were just coming here, finding the job, and then, or they interview for the job before coming here, get a job offer letter, and then have the husband come here and buy while then once the house is purchased, then everybody comes over. So I had that happen a bunch of times, but, uh, the field, I don't know. I mean, I wish I had a nice list of where fields there are, but most of the people during the COVID time, it was just getting out of California and coming here. And sometimes it was partial moves. Some people came sometimes it was everybody staying at a hotel. It was craziness. It was absolute craziness.
Are you seeing exodus? I mean, even working with buyers, are you going through houses that are vacant, existing homes that are primarily vacant? Are you seeing where people are selling to say, you know what, I moved here, I'm out of here, or I've lived here forever, and because of all this domestic migration, these Californians that have invaded our state, maybe I don't know whether
You
that's the
sound
case.
like a lot of YouTube thumbnails right now.
That's
Uh, no, I mean, I've helped once again, I'm not a high producer by any means, so um, I mean, I'm not like I don't have a massive team of people and help, I do okay, but not like a massive amount. But I can think for my clientele, one person that moved back to home, and they moved back home because they want to be closer to family. They tried it. They moved by here 2 years ago, and they said, our jobs are better. They're paying us more, and they just decided to go back home to San Diego, and they went back. But I'm not seeing that kind of movement. I'm not seeing where like most of my people that moved here 3, 4 years ago are not moving back to California. So no, and most of the times when I'm encountering happening buyers, and we talked about sellers in a seller situation, it's always work related. It's never like, oh, I hate them, how much Californians there are here, we're leaving. Once you're here, that's not the vibe. It's not very like people don't talk about that. You happen to hear and mention, oh, I'm over here from California a few years ago or something, but it's not like this.
they're afraid to tell people. Maybe
Yeah,
that's,
maybe they are, but
they're like, oh man, whatever you do, just don't look. I'm going to bring you to this party, but I don't want you to tell anybody you're from California. All right.
yeah, I make fun of those people when they still have their California number. I'm like, "Hey, you've been here for 4 years already. You're not a
That's,
California anymore. You gotta change that
that's right.
number."
That's right.
But no, it's not. Once again, it's a perception, right? It's what's being put out there. The thumbnails and the titles, the news articles, or oh my god, Exodus and this that people are flocking and fires. No, it's if there are like serious things happening like foreclosures or short sales, it's very private, very quiet. I was seeing a little bit sharper rise of short sales in the last few months. I didn't really look into it that much, but those short sales were primarily people looking to sell that bought here 2 months ago, 3 months ago, but it wasn't anything alarming. When I joined, it was all short sales, and back in was it 2013 ish? There was all short sales, so that's all I did. So I kind of know what to look out for, but I maybe it was primarily a few cities where I was seeing a lot of them, but majority of the houses I would see, like 98% of them were not short sales. So it wasn't enough to report on it or anything crazy like that.
Well, they're not foreclosing on people. I mean,
Yeah,
there's an
not yet because
amazing
it was
amount of
short
people
sales.
that are, yeah, there's amazing amount of people that aren't paying their mortgages, and they have had multiple remods, and now, Fannie and Freddie have been selling all the NPLs, non-performing loans, and reperforming loans, RPLs, to, Wall Street companies, bundling them up together, 700 loans in this bundle, 1,000 loans in that bundle. So they're doing everything they can to not have foreclosures. I feel like we'd be having a completely different conversation had they not been doing this and remodifying these mortgages. Um, what about well, first let me ask you, how long have you lived in Arizona? Your whole life, or what? I mean, when did you move to Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here my whole life. I've lived in different parts of Phoenix and Goodyear and East Valley and everything, but no, I've never lived anywhere else.
Is it like, how do you deal with the heat? I mean, isn't it like really hot? People say, well, it's a dry heat. Man, let me tell you something. You crank the oven up and stick your head in there. It's a dry heat, but it's hot. Burn your eyeballs. How do you
Yeah,
guys handle the heat?
there's 3 or 4 months of the year where you run to your car, you drive somewhere, then you run to the indoors of wherever you're driving to, you drum back to your car, and thankfully, hopefully, you have the car that can turn on itself so it can cool for you ahead of time. So yeah, there's been some summers where it's like, "It's been a hot one." I'm like, "Yeah, I've just been really good with my migration habits where I'll park and I'll close and then I'll run to shade and back." So, I'm very fortunate where I'm not in an industry where I have to be outside a lot. I mean, I do some showing sometimes in the heat, but it's just something you get used to and something you have to be mindful of. You learn to, for example, I've never lived in an area where it snows. I imagine you have to have backup jackets or backup sweaters, or you just kind
Blankets.
of the lifestyle you have right here. You just always make sure you carry water with you. You always make sure to, at least for me, because I'm a bigger guy working on losing it, but have extra shirts in case you sweat through it and stuff like that. So you just kind of adjust and try not to panic about the water problems I keep hearing on the news. But other than that, I mean, it's just you just kind of get accustomed to it.
Yeah. Your neighborhoods, are they, and how about, I think about, um, I've gone to some pretty hot states, and I mean, you could actually probably get third-degree burns in your car if you can't turn your car on to cool it down before you jump in it. I mean, you just can't touch anything.
Yeah,
Um,
especially if you have leather seats. I don't, but you
yeah.
can't even touch it, you're just there. So, yeah, it's unbearable sometimes. You have to be mindful of where you park and stuff like that. Sometimes I forget to turn the car on before I get to it, and, oh, man, I gotta suffer in this heat for a bit, but I think in perspective, it could always be worse, and you have to remind yourself in those, "Oh my gosh, my car's kinda hot right now," but yeah, but you have food, your kids are healthy, so you kinda have to play that game a bit, but yeah, it's very fortunate. I never, no heat strokes. My kids have never done heat strokes, but they're just very sheltered. And during the summer, we just don't go out very often. We just stay indoors.
Tell me about your neighborhoods. Condos, a lot of condos, HOAs. I mean, or do you find that even a lot of the existing homes that are, 10 years old, 15, 20 years old, are they in HOAs as well? Or just kind of what's the housing regime?
Well, in the late 90s, the HOAs got in bed with us, our builders. So now every house built after the 90s has that same look, the stucco, stucco look with the Spanish tile. You know what I'm talking about? So,
Yeah.
yeah, basically any house built after the 90s has a similar look. Some of them try to be more creative and add more greens, or they'll add different shades of colors, but most of them are going to be that Spanish. I don't know the name of it. I should probably know, ranch style home, stucco with with the garage, and nothing too fancy. There are certain neighborhoods that do pop up that are more custom, that build a more modern home, but and nothing fancy. We don't have too much condos here. We have condos primarily in our, like, maybe Scottsdale's our little California, right? So, houses or in neighborhoods where houses are really expensive, there'll be more condos options available there. But like for example, my area here, we're more suburbia area, very few condos. They're sporadic, so it's all going to be your classic home. And if you want something different, with like do a brick built home, then it's before the '80s is when they built them that way. So there's a variety. First off, when I say you're a first time home buyer and I meet with you, so one of the first few questions after our timeline, after your financial situation, but what do you like in a home? Like, what are you, HOA or no HOA? Is usually one of the first questions. That'll kind of help me determine: are you going for those newer houses that are just not really much character, or are we going for those older houses that don't have HOA, but you might move into it next to a neighbor that might want to paint their door with yellow polka dots, and maybe park their cars in the yard that you have to worry about, right? So people always talk down about HOAs, but listen, I never had any issues with neighbors in the HOAs. Yes, they never talk to you in HOA communities, but they don't, let your grass grow out. They don't get crazy. So at least they do a good job with that.
I hate HOAs. Man, I'll tell you,
I got that feeling
I
from
mean,
you.
it's like, man, I am not an HOA guy. And I wouldn't say, I mean, maybe hate's too strong of a word, using it very loosely. But I think that what my experience, and look, and I was a contractor that worked for HOAs and condominium associations for better part of 30 years. And what I experienced was, you know, the board changed based on their agendas. So, you get these people that they want certain things in the community. They want to spend people's money a certain way. So they get on the board, they get elected on the board, and not a lot of people want to be on the board. So they end up staying there for a long time, and they allocate the money to things that is important to them. And I think there's a lot of brokenness in that. And I think the builders, is somebody that has built houses. I think the governments took the cheap way out by saying, look, we're going to let this regime, this homeowners association, do a lot of the work so we don't have to do it as a government agency, right? We're going to push the roadways to them. We're going to do the infrastructure, the stormwater management, and all these things that we don't have to maintain, that they're getting tax money to do so into these. So it's almost like, it's an interesting dichotomy. But I think that a lot of people, the important thing is maybe they want a fence, maybe they want a privacy fence, and the HOA says you can't have one, or you got to go through an architectural committee and do this exorbitant amount of crap that costs so much more money to build a deck, when because part of it is the contractor has to actually give them all these extra things that they just want to build a deck to code. They don't want to have to spend $2,000 for a plan to build a $10,000 or $15,000 deck. It's a lot of that kind of minutia that I think is just unwelcomed. And the condominium associations, and now you get into this situation where, the insurance has changed in Maryland now. To give you an example, in condos, if you're a homeowner and something happens in your unit, and your unit results in a loss to other units or the actual condo building itself, maybe it's a flood, whatever. Insurance companies now, before it was capped at a $5,000 deductible, now it's a $10,000 deductible. So people don't realize that now their deductibles are have changed. Is as part of a mandatory sweep of legislation change, and now your insurance companies are just jacking the rates of these common areas to the point that where people can't afford them. So I see where people are, a lot of the condos, the elderly, a lot of them move into these condominium buildings. They're on fixed incomes. And now they have, these fees that they can't afford. It's crazy. Crazy.
A bunch of HOAs and I got together and we sent you a nice gift, but I guess we'll just cancel it then since
cancel it out, man. Yeah.
You're gonna throw it away.
Right. Cancel it.
You're just gonna rip it up. HOAs.
You're funny. Oh man. All right. So look, give us some ideas. What are some of your predictions? I mean, you've been in the market for 12 years. I mean, you know the market. You say you haven't done a lot of production. You've done a decent amount. I mean, it's, I think maybe, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you did like $15 or $16 million in 2024. Dude, we're talking about a lot of people didn't do any transactions in 2024. I mean, you've got a pretty decent bankroll of business. Where do you think things are going? I mean, do you see, if you had to close the door and have like a brutal conversation with yourself and say, Javier, not what I'm necessarily hoping for. What do you expect in the next 12 months in the with the housing market?
Well, before I say that, I wanted to say who the people that are going to, if the rates do drop, let's say they would drop once again in September. They dropped, I think, mid fives for FHA, I think low sixes for conventional. If you think about who benefited from that, it's the people that were already in the process of buying, and then the rates happen to drop that low, and they're like, oh, great, let's lock in there. Or maybe people that just made the offer and it got under contract around that time, because from the point it started dropping to the lowest point, it took 30 days. So those are the people that were really the highly benefited. The people that started to decide to jump into looking into a house at the lowest missed that dip because it takes 30, 45 days to get the ball rolling and get a house, right? So that being said, you need to have a plan. You need to have your own personal goal of what you need to do to get to the point where you may consider buying a home. Whether it's a savings amount, it's a credit needs to go somewhere. Maybe it's affordability amount. You need to get some promotion, or whatever the case is. Those goals need to be very concrete and written on paper. And when you are ready to buy, then you evaluate the rates and you evaluate the market, and then you make the decision. So those people, we said earlier, you're not going to jump in just because rates are lower. If the rates happen to be dipping or dropping by the time you're buying, good, then that means great. But it's not all bad when it's a high rate, high price market. Before you throw the apple at the screen, it's kind of fun. The sellers aren't having a hard time sell, so you have a lot more options. You have a lot more ability to negotiate. Yes, some of them are stubborn, but you can find a deal and you can say, hey, let's offer them 30K below list and see what says. You can do that kind of stuff in a market that's slower. So it's not, you're not competing and having to waive your inspections or reduce or come up out of pocket in case it doesn't appraise. People always put this COVID market on the pedestal, but they don't remember that you had to be in a house within an hour and you needed to waive your appraisal, waive your inspection, come up with you had to make up a clause that said, if it doesn't appraise up to 20,000 below price, I'll make up the difference cash, or you had to offer 50, 60,000 above price. It was insane. So there's pros and cons to every market, and you don't want to be influenced by what's going on externally. You want to have your internal plans, and when you're ready, then you analyze. And if it happens to be dipping at that time, great. If it has to be going up at that time, then it is what it is. But those goals need to be based off your personal goals and desires, and you need to have a strong foundational why. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to be a homeowner? are you okay being a homeowner if your value drops in half? And if the answer is still yes, then you do it. Now that being said, predictions on the market, I think it's we're just seeing. I don't know what's going to happen with the tariff situation. If they enforce them and they continue to be on board, um, I mean, I'm seeing a situation where mortgage rates drop. I am seeing a situation where more buyers are going to be influenced to buy because rates are dropping, even though it's not really changing much, maybe a few $100s, maybe 10 to 20, $50,000 over 30 years. But if they're going to drop, and I'm going to see more people hit the market, and any kind of improvement where we're seeing price wise, I mean, I think like here in Phoenix, last I checked, we were between 24,000 in inventory. So we're probably going to see a lot of the inventory get gobbled up. And if it continues, then we might see that buyer market start kind of transitioning closer to a seller. But that's just my opinion on Phoenix. Talk to your, local people, figure out what's going on in your market. It can be completely different. Don't just trust one source. Even these, eight channels on YouTube or news articles, they're going to be looking at national data. Don't look at national data to make a very private, personal decision. Consider national data, consider local data, consider like county data. Just get a really good feel of everything before you make a decision. Shoot, even when you see a house you like, pull comparables for that neighborhood. Like you have to really not be influenced. And if you're doing this, you're doing it for a personal reason. But that being said, you're asking me about the market. I do see rates dropping. I do see buyers entering the market more, and unfortunately, going to probably see sellers start to get their way again. Which means that if there's more buyers, there's more. I hope I don't see multiple offer situations, but it's definitely going to get maybe a little bit more competitive for buyers.
A couple things. You said if you're entering the market now, maybe you can get the house for $30,000 off. If you just look at a house 5 years ago, I'm sure the Phoenix area is no different. If it was a $300,000 house and you were in one of those markets that only increased 40%, that's 120,000. So today, 4 years later, you're looking at a house at 420,000. It appreciated 120,000 4 years, maybe 5 years. Some people are looking at that saying a $30,000 price reduction isn't is a drop in the bucket to what they need to see affordability, really take shape. So they're not encouraged by 30 grand. They're like, you may have the buyers that are like, yeah, cool, I like that 30,000 off. And then you have other people that are like, man, that it still has 60,000 to go. 30,000 isn't enough. I guess, yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out. The tariffs, if the building industry, if new home construction is crushed by tariffs, which maybe when you're dealing with a lot of the China imports that are going into these new homes, the lumber that's coming out of Canada, if we start seeing where these prices don't get absorbed by the other countries, where a lot of that overflows into the U.S., the builders are going to stop building. If the affordability can't increase, the builders will just stop, and that will probably push higher pricing or the potential for higher pricing in what we were hoping, a declining price market, or buyers are hoping in a declining price market, or at least where the trends are going. So I do think that tariffs are something to watch out for. But at the same time of that, if the tariffs or if we're going to see a short-term pain or even a long-term pain in the form of recession, that just may implode the whole system and prevent anybody from getting any more money on their houses where they have to sell them for a lot less. So it could go either way. I think in looking at this, I have a tendency to think that things are going to decline more than they'll appreciate. I just happen to be a little bit more bearish on this market because of the affordability. I look at what people are making, what people have to spend in order to, and then the rising cost of insurance and taxes. So I think, I'm a little bit more bearish. You say multiple offers will return. We already see that here in Maryland. We have multiple offers in a lot of markets, but not all of the markets. But I guess in bringing that to a close, I'd like to ask you, do you think the agents have anything to do with these prices staying high?
Good question. Meaning the seller's not reducing, like doing price reductions and whatnot, right?
Or just agents in general, puffing, maybe exaggerating contract offers and, that they have, or just, working or the buyer's agent puffing and using, the buyer's emotions or exuberance to push them offering the prices that they're, the higher prices than they maybe would need to.
So I had a situation where I listed a house in a very fair price in the consider in that area, at least considered comparables, at 599 or 600. I thought that was a decent price. It was a few months ago. I was still using the idea like, well, we should probably price where a little bit more than what it's worth. Nothing, no showings or anything. We were reducing 580, 590, 570, 560, and we would maybe get a little bit more showings. But nothing really was happening. Once we got it to a certain number, I want to think it was 550. I don't think we started at 580, not 600. Once we got to like 550, we just started getting multiple offers for one weekend. And one of these offers were they got it, I think 10,000 below list, maybe some closing costs. They told us, oh, we've been looking for the last 6 months for this specific floor plan, but it wasn't popping up in our inventory. So, um, at that point, could you say, well, was it my fault for not telling him to reduce it at 550? Well, if I would have said, hey, let's price it at 550, those sellers would have told me to go F myself and go shove something up my you know what. So it wouldn't necessarily be on me. Is it the seller's fault? No, because they're looking at what I'm saying, and they also have specific goals they want to try to meet. So they want to at least try. If they would have never been reducing the price, who can we blame there? Can we blame me for not asking them to reduce the price, or can we blame them for not accepting my proposals for reducing the price? So it could go both ways at that point. But then at the same time, for the buyer that ended up buying it, why weren't they looking a little bit higher? Was it the buyer's agent that wasn't doing a good job pushing their value, or were they being respectful of the price that they were looking for? And on top of that, when they did get it and they got it below list price, the buyer's agent's goal is to try to represent their buyer and save the money. So they ended up getting it cheaper. So, I mean, that story to show you is that is it, I don't really necessarily think it's agents puffing, or I like to say, well, it's the sellers not being understandable, but then they also have goals in mind that they're trying to meet. I think it's just there's this fifth party in a transaction, four parties being buyer, the seller, agents for both of them, at least in an ideal situation. The fifth party is the market. Like we're all just have this monster per fifth party that we're trying to interpret and understand that changes daily, even hourly. And I think those who are deciding to not acknowledge it and like see what that's telling us. So for example, I might have a seller who doesn't want to price reduce and just says, "We'll just do more open houses. That'll solve this." Well, I can continue to do open houses, but if we don't do price reductions, with the fifth parties literally telling us there's no showings, this isn't the right price, then at that point, it's whoever's not deciding to listen to it. So I can't necessarily put the blame on somebody. I'm sure there's stories out there of situations where a buyer puffs something, or a buyer's agent puffs something, or seller's agent. I think it's just in a specific transaction is whoever is not acknowledging the elephant in the room, and the elephant being the market and what the market is telling us indirectly by the showings and the pricing that we have it, that is at fault, quote unquote, for a house not selling. So I think right now it's just a lot of houses aren't selling because there's just not a lot of buyers, and the buyers that are buying want a massive discount on a resale because there's just the affordability is out of control, and a lot of sellers that doesn't line up with their goals, and they'd rather just not sell, and that's the kind of stalemate that we've been at. So can't give you a direct answer there. It's just kind of much more nuanced than that, right?
Yeah.
But it would be nice if I can just blame somebody and just say this is why. But
Yeah.
every situation is different.
Yeah. Well, I think, I guess the getting back to the question is, and you sort of defined it, is you had a house that was priced at about 580, you got down to 550, and you got multiple offers. Where did you end up selling that house?
It was 540.
Okay, so it was You had multiple offers, but they were still for less. So
They were still for less.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not even like we got the right number and now it's that. It was just we got the right number to just even be considered for offers. There's like it
So,
wasn't even that for that
my
house.
question. So I guess the question is, had you had any offers at all at 580?
Nope.
Did you have them at 570, 560, or you didn't? So you had nothing. So
No
I guess I guess my point is, where was the buyer's agent or that buyer not offering the 540 when it was priced at 580 and wasn't selling?
I would assume it's because they MLS, I mean, buyer's agents are like, hey, this person's looking up to 550 in this area. Search parameters 550. Search parameters this area. Boom. Think for me. Set up auto search. Boom.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And you can call that lazy, but you can also say, hey, I'm not, because a lot of agents out there are like, the Property Brothers and the car salesman. Oh, we've seen that, and we're aware of that. We don't want to be that person that says, hey, look at this, but this one's nice. Well, look at this one for $40,000 out of your budget. So it's, and then at the same time, would my seller have taken an offer that low at 580, right? So it's like when the seller reduces their price, their scale changes a bit, right? They're not at 580 or 590, a price at 540, that would have been considered a lowballer. We would have been offended maybe in the way. Also, time on market matters too. If they would have gotten that offer initially, they would have just been flabbergasted by it. So it's
but
really
the conversation should have been had. I would have called you up and said, Javier, how the heck did you get this? We're in a declining market here. My buyer's looking at this. I mean, look, it would have been an option out there. At least you would have had an option. I mean, it's, I think, if buyers are going to start seeing better affordability, they need to start taking shots. Even if it's declined, if it's not, I can't tell you, first of all, you could use the analogy, how many hits do you make on the swings that you don't, that you miss? I mean, if you're not swinging and you're not missing, you're not getting, it's a process of waking up. Right. And I do think a lot of it is because, you said it, is an agent getting lazy. I do think the industry in a lot of ways coming out of this 4 and 5 year run, the agents are not as aggressive in working for maybe their buyer's behalf as much, and so I think that, I'm just saying that the market's shifting. Buyers need to start pushing for the things that, they're on the internet. They're not seeing. You don't have to wait until that price comes down on a house that's been sitting on the market until the seller decides, go see it, take a shot, put an offer in. Javier just may be calling you up saying, you know what, my client is considering it. Not now, but maybe in another couple of weeks. So stick those offers in anyway is what I would do. It's
if the market does continue to the way it's been, like I said, this last month I've been a lot more successful with my lowball offers for sure. I'm just concerned to see if rates do continue to drop. I wonder what's going to happen in that situation. Which we'll see.
Yeah, I think if history tells us anything, the affordability is still way out there, and people are in more debt today than they were 4 years from now, living off of credit cards and high interest loans. They're paying their student loans again, things like that. I don't think we have any magic. I think the buyer, according to NAR, their last report was from like July of 23 until June of 24. I think our buyer pool, the average age of the home buyer was like 59. So, it's clear that the affordability for the young people and the first-time buyers are completely shot. And I think we have a hell of a long way to go before we start to see the buyers submerging themselves, at least these first-time buyers, back in the marketplace. But Javier, man, we appreciate you coming on. And hey, I'm glad, we had one of our guests on the show recommended having you. I'm glad that we got to know each other, and certainly would love to have you back on to talk about what's happening, after a couple months of this non-spring market that we're experiencing traditionally. Sales not showing much better than they were last year, which isn't saying much. But we'll see where it goes, and We want those first-time home buyers to have the opportunities that they're looking for to achieve home ownership. So,
sure, watch out for those HOAs.
You got it, man. Don't send me any HOA gifts. Javier, appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for watching. If you like the video, you can let us know by smashing that thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so now. Hit that alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content just like this. Keep those comments and questions coming. And one of the biggest compliments you can do for us all here at Sachs Realty is to share our channel and this video with your family and friends. This will help us to continue to build this amazing online community with viewers just like yourself. See you next time. Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.